What is up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be talking about the boss POIs in Season 4 now that the medallions have been removed and whether or not they are still worth landing at. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below if you've still been landing at the boss POIs since the medallion have been removed. And I've seen a lot of comments and players saying that these boss POIs are now trash and questioning why anyone would even bother landing at them now that the medallions have been, taken out of the game. But I still think they're quite good, and landing at it on stream to get gameplay for this video, I genuinely had people asking, like, why bother even landing here? The medallion was the only reason to land here. And I do not think that's true at all. So for starters, there's still a lot of loot that you can get at these POIs very quickly with like the nests and the orange chest things that you have to open. I think pretty much always when you're leaving these POIs, if you looted those things, which you kind of have to do to summon the queen anyways, you should have like pretty high rarity weapons, access to lots of heals, lots of ammo because the bugs drop them. And so you're kind of set for the game, guaranteed every time you land here, I feel like. And while the medallion is gone, you no longer get that for eliminating the queen, at least as of the time I'm making this video. There's some speculation that maybe they'll return later on in the season, but for now, there's no medallions, right? You still get a mythic weapon, which can be quite good, and the legendary slurp juice. And for years in Fortnite, we had boss POIs where all you got was a mythic weapon and then sometimes a vault as well with some loot in it. And they were always, these boss POIs, even prior to medallions, they were always like pretty highly rated and sought after. Like they would often have like a lot of players landing here and a lot of like contesting going on there. And as of now, like you still get a good mythic weapon in the case of like the OXR rifle and the Wrecker revolver. I'm not a huge fan of the sweeper shotgun, but if you are, you get that. And then you also have the legendary slurp juice, which is one of the most effective healing items ever made in Fortnite. It is incredibly good. It heals you very quick. It heals both white and blue health at the same time. It ticks up over time, meaning if you like pop this before you go into a fight, you're just like regenerating health over the course of that fight, and it gives you a huge advantage, So you have the slurp, which is great. You have the mythic, which is quite good. And with the hives and the orange chest, like the loot you get from them throughout the POI, I think is like kind of comparable to the loot that you would find in some vaults. If you guys played in Chapter 2 Remix, the vaults were kind of underwhelming at times because it was just like a few chests, I think these orange chests that you get guaranteed are pretty comparable to what we saw from some vaults in the past. And while eliminating the queen and dealing with all these bugs might be more overwhelming or more to deal with than we had in some boss POIs, also don't think it is that much. When we had the vaults in Chapter 4 Season 4, you would have to eliminate a boss, you would have to deal with all the turrets and the alarms and all the guards and stuff. And then that was just for, some chests and a random mythic. At least with these vaults, you do get the mythic guaranteed, that you are actually landing for. Another thing that's really beneficial about these boss POIs is how influential the OXR ranks are this season. Because pretty much every time I've landed at this POI and eliminated the queen, even if there was no other enemies here, just like dealing with the nests and opening the orange chests, eliminating bugs and eliminating the queen, I pretty much always get to A tier by doing that. And getting to A tier is really important this season because that gives you your A tier OXR drop, which has guaranteed shockwaves in it, which is good because, there's not as much mobility in the game now as of last week's update. You get your A tier boon, which is also nice, but the guaranteed shocks is great. I wish they still gave more shocks like how they did at the start of the season, especially with the shockwave launcher being vaulted. But even still, there's a lot of value in getting this drop and getting that guaranteed mobility. And then you also unlock the ability to open the exotic bunkers, which is, for all intents and purposes, its own little vault. You get a random exotic weapon, which some of these exotics are incredible. The exotic Wrecker revolver, I think, is very, very good. The exotic OXR rifle is very good. The slurp fizz, or whatever it's called, the exotic fizz, I wasn't the biggest fan of, but with the removal of the medallions and how the game is currently playing, I kind of rate the flowberry fizz higher than I previously did. So getting this exotic version, which also gives you slap and has 300 in it, is an incredible healing item, especially in team game modes, because you can get a lot of value out of that, healing everybody on your team, giving the flow effect to everybody on your team. and giving slap to everybody on your team. So these exotics are very high value, and so is the loot inside the vault. You typically will get some form of mobility here, which it's random, so it's not always the case, but oftentimes I do get shockwaves out of the bunker, which is nice to start my game. If things go well, I've gotten the mythic, the legendary slurp juice, the exotic, and hopefully full shockwaves between the A drop, the bunker, and just the random loot I get from the Queen POI, you know? And that's an incredible start to the game. And with these boss POIs, each boss POI has 2 potential bunkers that spawn near it. So the way the bunkers work is there's 4 spawns for them and 2 spawn per game. And the way they're kind of laid out, each of the boss POIs is within very close distance to 2 of the potential bunker spawns. And so you often will get first dibs on one of the bunkers if you do clear your Queen POI relatively quickly. You could get unlucky spawns where just the 2 bunkers that happen to spawn that game are the 2 that are far away from your POI. That can definitely happen. It's not guaranteed you'll have one close to you. But just statistically, the way, you know, being close to 50% of the bunkers should result in you being close to one of them at least a majority of the time, which also really helps your game because the first person to get into these bunkers is obviously going to have first dibs on the loot. So I think that not only what you get from the POI, but like kind of the pacing that sets you up for at the start of the game is still very valuable in this current season. And you can definitely get to A tier quickly by landing at other areas. You know, you could land at a POI, there's a lot of people there, you eliminate them, and then you quickly get to A tier and get the bunker. That can definitely happen, but it's not as guaranteed because it's kind of reliant on other players landing there and you eliminating, you know, several of them to get the OXR rank quickly. With the boss, you know, the Queen being guaranteed at the Queen POI as well as the nest and the orange chest, I feel like if you do those activities, you're guaranteed to get to A tier at the boss POIs, regardless of how many players land there, which is like very good, I think. It's up to chance at other POIs. It's kind of guaranteed here if you get the objectives. And another thing about players where they land is that, as I touched on at the start of the video, the whole point the whole reason I'm making this video is that a lot of people think these boss POIs are useless now and they're terrible and why would anyone bother landing there? That means you're going to have less players landing on you for these POIs. In the initial days of last season, or the initial days of the season, sorry, you had huge percentages of the lobby landing at these boss POIs because the medallions were perceived to be so overpowered, right? But now you'll often get it to where there's not that many people landing there. Like being completely uncontested is not common, but I had it happen several times today. But either way, the amount of, even when there was people landing here, it was noticeably less than it was before the medallions were removed, which makes perfect sense, right? So these POIs definitely got a little bit worse with the medallions being removed, but they also got quite a bit easier to loot, I think, with less players landing here. And that's going to make it, you know, obviously easier for you to do everything, but faster as well, which is going to, you know, again, ramp you into A tier quickly and let you get the first dibs on those exotic bunkers. So I think it's definitely, the removal of the medallions is definitely a noticeable change, and it does make these POIs worse. But they dropped from being like super overpowered because the movement medallions were very good to just being solid good POIs with reason to land there, you know? And the community is acting as if they're like the worst thing ever. So I definitely admit they got worse, but they went from like S tier to like A or B tier. It's not like they're, you know, F tier. They're still very solid POIs, and I think with them being easier to land at, that's definitely a benefit with this update. But that is going to be it for this video. Just wanted to go over why I still think the boss POIs were good, because I got asked about it a decent amount today. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.